Always love to get the opponent's perspective here on PHNX Cardinals. Make sure you subscribe to PHNX Sports here on YouTube. Drop a like on this video. We got our guy Bubs on sports joining us with the Jets perspective. Aaron Rodgers and his passing attack finally figured it out as they come to the desert. Are the Cardinals in a major trap game situation? Now, when we look at this Jets season, it's been uneven. It's been probably disappointing from a lot of Gangrene's perspective. Where do you put the Jets right now? Like, what's your confidence level with them under an interim coach and kind of Aaron Rodgers calling the shots? How do you feel about them right now entering week 10?
Yeah, it's been frustrating to say the least, right? You go into this season after Rodgers tears ACL last year, Achilles last year, 4 snaps in. I was at that game. It was awful. You wait all last year. You finish 7-10. They bring the whole coaching staff back. You go into the season with all this excitement, Garrett Wilson, Rodgers, all this, and it's been nothing short of a disaster, right? You win that Thursday night against New England, and you go on that 5-game losing streak. You fire Robert Saleh. You change offensive play callers to Todd Downing, replacing Nathaniel Hackett. Then you trade for Davante. You bring Hassan Reddick back in after he holds out for the first 7 games of the season. And right now it's, coming off of a game against Houston, it gave you some hope. But to me, this team still got to get back to 500. I have a lot of questions about the coaching staff, Jeff Ulbrich, how much he actually has control right now. This locker room, to me, it seems he's a little bit overwhelmed. He's a little in over his head right now. From a defensive perspective, they haven't been that same dominant defense that we saw them prior to the Robert Saleh firing. I think a part of that is just Jeff Ulbrich so overwhelmed from a defensive play calling. He's got to coach a team, Aaron Rodgers, all this outside noise, all this stuff. And then you have a general manager right now that really isn't doing a whole lot. Woody Johnson pushed the Davante Adams trade over the goal line, and he was also the reason Hassan Reddick's here. And Joe Douglas spoke yesterday and talked about how he basically works at the pleasure of the owner, and he had really no say in the Saleh firing. He had no say in the Davante Adams thing. He had no say in the Hassan Reddick thing. So deep in this organization, there's a lot of problems. On the surface, it doesn't look pretty, but at the end of the day, they're loaded with talent. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams. It felt like last week something clicked. I don't know if you heard about it, but the whole cayenne pepper and water thing here is is all the rage right now with Thomas Morstead, the Jets punter, of course, recommending it to Rodgers, took it and looked like, his spry 30-year-old out there on Thursday. So we'll see if that's what helps this team. But the big thing I'm looking for in this matchup too is just how they come out. The Jets in past years and even earlier in the season, when they have extra time to prepare, they tend to struggle. Earlier in the year against New England, they won that game. Then they lost 10-9 to Denver. Here you have 10 days to prep after the Thursday night game. Out west, they've always struggled going across the country. So, I have my doubts, but at the end of the day, he looked good last week, and hopefully something clicked, especially with Davante Adams, his first real big Jets moment after a slow start against Pittsburgh and New England.
All right, have you dabbled in the cayenne pepper and water? Does it work? I mean, you're a young man. You probably don't need that.
No, not yet. I might have to if they win this week, just to kind of as a rally thing, just to keep the vibes going. But I mean, hey, if it sparks something, I'm all here for it. I'll drink. If this all ends up in a parade down the Canyon of Heroes, I will gladly chug a whole thing of cayenne pepper and water. But
you'll take a Gatorade bath in that at that point. Look, let's talk. I want to get into the defense, but a little bit more about this offense before we move on, because that's obviously got so much star power that they brought in, and Rodgers brings his buddy and Davante Adams, as you mentioned. Like you watch those catches made by Wilson and Adams for his first Jets tutty, and it's like those seem like they're go balls on that. Like what can they hang their hat on offensively that has worked consistently, and then what's maybe budding and can kind of build off of last Thursday's win against the Texans?
Yeah, I think what's worked so far is they've started to target Garrett Wilson a lot more. Early in the season, him and Rodgers were off. Something wasn't clicking there. They looked great during training camp, and then the season started and just there was some sort of disconnect. But recently, it's been a lot better. He's had a couple consistent 100-yard games. He had the one ball that popped off of his chest against Pittsburgh, which completely changed the game. But other than that, this is a guy right now that's top 5 in the NFL in receiving yards. And right now leads the league in receptions. He's been that good. He's gotten a lot of looks, leads the league in targets. So he's had a really, really productive season. So I think you've got to continue to get him involved. And then from Davante, there was some rust between the two of them the first 2 weeks. Even the start against Houston, there was that first play early in the game where he overthrew Davante by a lot. And then they started to get into the groove of things. I would like to see this team to continue to try and target the middle of the field. For many weeks during that losing streak, Rodgers, and actually, if you look at the numbers up until last week, he had one of his lowest target percentage like over the middle of the field since his rookie season. It's, there's been many plays where he looks across the middle, kind of hesitates, clutches, and then settles for underneath to Brees, or settles for a sideline play, or just throws it away, or ends up taking a sack. Last week you saw them kind of go across the middle a little bit more. I hope you can continue to see that, but I do think something clicked with him and Davante, kind of turning back the clock a little bit. Him and Garrett, the connection's been a lot stronger really over the last 3-4 weeks. And even Brees Hall, now with the trade of Mike Williams, look for Brees Hall to get even more reps in the passing game. And even Malachi Corlin and Xavier Gibson potentially as well to get more looks, with Lazard on IR for another 3 weeks. Most likely comes back after the bye. And then, of course, with Mike Williams being dealt to Pittsburgh.
Kind of lost in the headlines of, Rodgers and Adams and Wilson with the jump man touchdown catch.
Yeah.
It was the defense balling on Thursday. Like, got to CJ Stroud often. Hassan Reddick, somebody that we kept tabs on because of the void here at pass rush, familiar name, drafted by the Cardinals, and there was organizational malpractice in putting him as off-ball linebacker instead of an edge rusher until the final year of his deal. How is Hassan Reddick? How's this Jets defense? You said it's probably playing below expectations. Do you think that that's a group that could trend in the right direction?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I've said this a lot this year. The Jets statistically on defense are still well where they usually are standards over the last 2 seasons, with Saleh and Oberker leading the way. But when you watch them play, the eye test is pretty ugly. To me, Sauce Gardner hasn't had a very good season. He's had a pretty large drop-off. And the pass rush as well. While we look at it and say they've had 31 sacks, that's tied for second in the NFL. There's been some times where some of those sacks are kind of late in games when the game's already over. There are times where, quarterback goes down and they pretty much just touch him and it's a sack. So they haven't been so much of those dominant reps where they're just taking over games and dominating. But hopefully last week was the start. And I certainly think Hassan Reddick, while it will take him a very long time to win this fan base over, because missing the first 7 games and then coming back just in time for that Patriots debacle was not a great look, but he's certainly opening things up, and it shows. I mean, Quinnen Williams got off to a slow start, had 1.5 sacks against New England, and then had 1.5 sacks last week. So clearly Reddick's present there has opened up Quinnen in the interior. And Will McDonald as well, all season long, has had a career year. So with those 2 guys on the edge, and some people forget Jermaine Johnson went down, which was a huge blow for us in the Tennessee game week 2. He tore his Achilles, so he's done for the year. He was a guy that was really primed for a huge year 3 jump after he took a year 2 leap last year. But right now, Reddick, he definitely helps up front from a pass rushing perspective. And linebackers wise, Quincy Williams is having another huge season. He continues to be kind of the heart and soul at times of this defense. Always just 100% effort, good in the open field, great sideline to sideline speed. Jamian Sherwood, another depth guy to look for in this game, who's put together a nice season, with CJ Mosley missing a lot of time. And then in the secondary, I mean, DJ Reed, they've got calls for him. I know the Commanders looked into him prior to the Marshawn Lattimore trade. He's a name that I think has been arguably one of the best corners in football. Definitely been better than Sauce this year. So those are some guys to look for him. Hopefully the 8 sacks last night could be, or on Thursday, could be the start of something, because they did have a huge performance earlier in the year against New England, which never really materialized. 7 sacks against Brissett and Drake May, who made his debut in that game. So hopefully this sparks something on Sunday.
Hopefully sparking it. Offense, defense, looking for something, consistently from this Jets team. 3-6 coming in, not licking their wounds. Finally got a dub.
Yep.
What would probably be the ingredients to this being a trap game for the Cardinals, who have won 3 straight, hosting this game going in, before their bye week?
I would say it's, from a running game perspective, I would say it's get the run game going with Breece Hall on offense for this team. Over the last couple weeks, more early in the season, Breece Hall was terrible. His yards per attempt were down. The last couple weeks, the yards per attempt have been up. They've been utilizing him a little bit more. Last week, I thought was the first time where they kept using him, and that really opened up the pass game. Against New England, they were using him early and then they got away from it, and it just didn't make a ton of sense what Todd Downing was trying to do. So I would try and get Breece Hall going early, have him run, open it up for the pass game, and then let's see some more Rodgers to Davante vintage connection, and maybe another huge jump man catch from Garrett Wilson. And then from a defense perspective, it's getting home to Kyler. The Cardinals offensive line this year has been very, very good from a pass protection and run blocking standpoint. They've been very good. So I think it's getting home to him. And probably the biggest X factor of them all is stopping James Conner and stopping this rushing attack for Arizona. The Jets right now ranked 21st in the NFL in run defense. And it's been ugly. They miss a lot of tackles. They get beat a lot of times just off the ball up front from a rep perspective, where there's three guys just getting pushed to the left and opens up a gaping hole to the right, or vice versa. So they got to win their reps up front. You can't miss these. You can't have these weak arm tackles that James Conner's just going to run through. So they've got to find a way to stop the run, because many times this season the Jets have lost games by teams just running and just wearing down this defense, and long 12, 13 play drives that just wear down a team and really just kind of just crush things from a offense perspective as well, because you can't get into much of a rhythm, lose the time of possession, all that stuff. So stopping James Conner is probably at least trying to contain him. And they won't fully stop him, but contain him.
Some big time keys there for the Cardinals to avoid a trap game here against the Jets, coming in at 3-6. Make sure you check out the interview Bubs and I did over on his channel, Bubs on Sports, here on YouTube. And of course, follow him on Twitter at Bubs52. Tremendous insight, my man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Make sure you subscribe to PHNX Sports here on YouTube and drop a like on this video. Drop a comment, your score prediction, Jets, Cards. Let us know who you think is going to walk away with the dub.
We all silly like the mayor.